Hello, 10th class students. Today we can start geography portion. Our lesson name is resources and development. Everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable, can be termed as resource. Now you can see in this figure it is 1.1 interdependent relationship between nature, technology and institution. Nature, technology and institution. The process of transformation of things available in our environment involves an interdependent relationship between nature, technology and institutions. Human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to accelerate their economic development. Do you think that resources are free gifts of nature as is assumed by many? These are not. Resources are a function of human activities. Human beings themselves are essential components of resources. They transformed material available in our environment into resources and use them. These resources can be classified in the following ways: on the basis of origin, biotic and abiotic; on the basis of exhaustibility, renewable and non-renewable; on the basis of ownership, that is individual, community, national and international; on the basis of status of development, potential, developed, stock and reserves. It is also described in figure 1.2 classification of resources. Types of resources on the basis of origins. Now we will discuss about biotic resources. These are obtained from biosphere and have lives such as human beings, flora and fauna, fisheries, livestock are the examples of biotic resources. Abiotic resources, all those things which are composed of non-living things are called abiotic resources. For example, rocks and metals means they don't have life, so they are called abiotic resources. On the basis of exhaustibility, renewable resources, the resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical or mechanical processes are known as renewable or replenishable resources. For example, solar and wind energy, water, forest and wildlife etc. are the examples. The renewable resources may be further be divided into continuous or flow that we had discussed in figure 1.2. Now, non-renewable resources, these occurs over a very long geographical time. Minerals and fossil fuels are examples of such resources. These resources take millions of years in their formation. Some of these resources like metals, are recyclable, and some, like fossil fuels, cannot be recycled and get exhausted with their use. Now, next one is on the basis of ownership, individual resources. These are also owned privately by individuals. Many farmers own land which is allotted to them by the government against the payment of revenue. In villages, there are people with land ownership, but there are many who are landless. Urban people own plot, houses and other property. Plantation, pastures lands, ponds, water in wells, etc. are some of the examples of resources ownership by individuals. Next one, community owned resources. These are resources which are accessible to all the members of the community. Village commons, grazing grounds, burial grounds, village ponds, etc. are the examples. Public parks, picnic spots, playgrounds in urban areas are de facto accessible to all the people living there. Next one, national resources. Technically, all the resources belong to the nation. The country has legal powers to acquire even private property for public good. You might have seen roads, canals, railways being constructed on field owned by some individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. All the minerals, water resources, forest, wildlife and land within the political boundaries and oceanic area up to 12 nautical miles, that is 19.2 kilometers from the coast, termed as territorial water and resources therein belong to the nation. Now we will discuss about international resources. There are international institutions which regulate some resources. The oceanic resources beyond 200 kilometers of the exclusive economic zone belong to open sea, and no individual country can utilize these without the concurrence of international institutions. Do you know that India has got the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean, from that area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zone? This is the example. Now, next one is on the basis of the status of development, potential resources. Resources which are found in a region but have not been utilized. For example, the western parts of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat, have enormous potential for the development of wind and solar energy. But so far, these have not been developed properly. Developed resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. The development of resources depends on technology and level of their feasibility. Next one is stock. Materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings do not have the appropriate technology to assess these or include among stock. For example, water is a compound of two inflammable gases, hydrogen and oxygen, which can be used as a rich source of energy, but we do not have the required technical know-how to use them for this purpose. Hence it can be considered as stock example. Next one is reserves. Reserves are the subset of the stock which can be put into use with the help of existing technical know-how, but their use has not been started. These can be used for meeting future requirements. River water can be used for generating hydroelectricity power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. Thus, the water in the dams, forests, etc. is a reserve which can be used in the future. Development of resources. Resources are vital for the human survival as well as for maintaining the quality of life. It was believed that resources are free gifts of nature. As a result, human beings use them indiscriminately, and this has led to the following major problems. First one is depletion of resources for satisfying the greed of few individuals. Second, accumulation of resources in few hands, which in turn divided the society into two segments, halves, and have nodes or rich and poor. Indiscriminate exploitation of resources has led to global economical crises such as global warming, ozone layer depletion, environmental pollution, and land degradation. An equitable distribution of resources has become essential for a sustained quality of life and global peace. If the present trend of resource depletion by a few individuals and countries continues, the future of our planet is in danger. Therefore, resource planning is essential for sustainable existence of all forms of life. Sustainable existence is a component of sustainable development. What is sustainable development? Sustainable economic development means development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of the future generation. Now we can discuss other examples. Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit 1992. In June 1992, more than 100 heads of states met in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil for the first International Earth Summit. The summit was convened for addressing urgent problems of environmental protection and socio-economic development at the global level. The assembled leaders signed the Declaration on Global Climatic Change and Biological Diversity. The Rio Conservation endorsed the Global Forest principles and adopted Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in the 21st century. And what is Agenda 21? It is the declaration signed by world leaders in 1992 at the United Nations Conference on Environmental and Development, which took place at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It aims at achieving global sustainable development. It is an agenda to combat environmental damage, poverty, disease through global cooperation on common interest, mutual needs and shared responsibilities. One major objective of the Agenda 21 is that every local government should draw its own local Agenda 21. Next one is resource planning. What is resource planning? Planning is the widely accepted strategy for judicious use of resources. It has importance in a country like India, which has numerous diversity in the availability of resources. There are regions which are rich in certain types of resources but are deficient in some other resources. There are some regions which can be considered self-sufficient in terms of availability of resources, and there are some regions which have acute shortage of some vital resources. For example, the states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh are rich in minerals and coal deposits. Arunachal Pradesh has abundance of water resources but lacks in infrastructural development. The state of Rajasthan is very well endowed with solar and wind energy but lacks in water resources. The cold desert of Ladakh is relatively isolated from the rest of the country. It has very rich cultural heritage, but it is deficient in water, infrastructure and some vital minerals. This calls for balanced resource planning at the national, state, regional, local levels. Resources planning in India. Resource planning is a complex process which involves identification and inventory of resources across the regions of the country. This involves surveying, mapping and qualitative and quantitative estimation and measurement of the resources, evolving a planning structure endowed with appropriate technology, skill and institutional setup for implementing resource development plans. Next one, matching the resource development plans with our overall national development plans. India has made concentrated efforts for achieving the goals of resource planning right from the first 5-year plan launched after independence. The availability of resources is a necessary condition for the development of any region, but mere availability of resources in the absence of corresponding changes in technology and institutions may hinder development. There are many regions in our country that are rich in resources, but these are included in economically backward regions. On the contrary, there are some regions which have a poor resource base but are economically developed. The history of colonizations reveals that rich resources in colonies were the main attractions for the foreign invaders. It was primarily the higher level of technological development of the colonizing countries that helped them to exploit resources of other regions and establish their supremacy over the colonies. Therefore, resources can contribute to development only when they are accompanied by appropriate technological development and institutional changes. India has experienced all these in different phases of colonizations. Therefore, in India, development in general and resource development in particular does not only involve the availability of resources but also the technology, quality of human resources and the historical experiences of the people. Now we will discuss about conservation of resources. Resources are vital for any development activity, but irrational consumption and overutilization of resources may lead to socio-economic and environmental problems. To overcome these problems, resource conservation at various levels is important. This had been the main concern of the leaders and thinkers in the past. For example, Gandhiji was very apt in voicing this concern about resource conservation in these words: "There is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed." He placed the greedy and selfish individuals and exploitative nature of modern technology as the root cause for resource depletion at the global level. He was against mass production and wanted to replace it with the production by the masses. Land resources. We live on land, we perform our economic activities on land and we use it in different ways. Thus, land is a natural resource of utmost importance. It supports natural vegetation, wildlife, human life, economic activities, transport and communication system. However, land is an asset of a finite magnitude. Therefore, it is important to use the available land for various purposes with careful planning. India has land under a variety of relief features, namely mountains, plateaus and plains and islands. About 43% of the land area is plain, which provides facilities for agriculture and industry. Mountains account for 30% of the total surface area of the country and ensure perennial flow of some rivers, provide facilities for tourism and ecological aspects. About 27% of the area of the country is the plateau region. It possesses rich reserves of minerals, fossil fuels and forest. By the help of figure 1.3, India land under important relief features. Plains we have 43%, mountains we have 30% and plateaus we have 27%. Now we can discuss land utilization. Land resources are used for following purposes. First one is forest. Second, land not available for cultivation, barren and wasteland. Land put to non-agricultural uses, that is buildings, roads, factories, etc. Third one, other uncultivated land excluding fallow land. Number one, permanent pastures and grazing land. Second, land under miscellaneous tree crops grows not included in net sown area. Third one, cultivable wasteland left uncultivated for more than 5 agricultural years. Next, fallow lands. Current fallow left without cultivation for 1 or less than 1 agricultural year. Next, other than current fallow left uncultivated for the past 1 to 5 agricultural years. Next one is net sown area. Area sown more than once in an agricultural year plus not sown area is known as gross cropped area. Land use pattern in India. The use of land is determined both by physical factors such as topography, climate, soil types, as well as human factors such as population, density, technological capability and cultural and traditionals, etc. Total geographical area of India is 3.28 million square kilometer land. Use data, however, is available only for 93% of the total area because the land use reporting for most of the northeast states except Assam has not been done fully. Moreover, some areas of Jammu and Kashmir occupied by Pakistan and China have also not been surveyed. Now we can see in figure 1.4 it is mentioned forest area, that is heading is reporting area 100%, that is general land use category in 1960-61, and second figure shows general land use of categories 2002-2003. First one is forest 18%, barren and wasteland area under known agricultural use, permanent pastures and grazing land area under miscellaneous tree crops and grows. Next one, cultivable wasteland. Next, fallow other than current fallow. Next, current fallow, and next one is net sown area. These are the comparison between 1960-61 and other one is 2002-2003. The land under permanent pasture has also decreased. How are we able to feed our huge cattle population on these pastures land, and what are the consequences of it? Most of the other than the current fallow lands are either of poor quality or the cost of cultivation of such land is very high. Hence, these lands are cultivated on or twice in about 2 to 3 years. As if these are included in the net zone area, then the percentage of NSA in India comes to about 54% of the total reporting area. The pattern of net zone area varies greatly from one state to another. It is over 80% of the total area in Punjab and Haryana and less than 10% in Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Manipur and Andaman Nicobar Islands. Forest area in the country is far lower than the desired 33% of geographical area, as it was outlined in the National Forest Policy 1952. It was considered Now we will discuss about land degradation and conservation measures. We have shared our land with the past generations and will have to do so with the future generations too. 95% of our basic needs for food, shelter and clothing are obtained from land. Human activities have not only brought about degradation of land but have also aggravated the pace of natural forces to cause damage to land. At present, there are about 130 million hectares of degraded land in India. Approximately 28% of it belong to category of forest degraded area. 56% of it is water eroded area and the rest is affected by saline and alkaline deposits. Some human activities such as deforestation, overgrazing, mining and quarrying too have contributed significantly in land degradation. You can see in figure 1.5, first one is water eroded area, second forest degraded area 28%, third one is saline and alkaline land, that is 6%, wind eroded area, that is 10%. Mining sites are abandoned after excavation work is complete, leaving deep space and terraces of overburdening. In states like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh and Orissa, deforestation due to mining have caused severe land degradation. In states like Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, overgrazing is one of the main resources for land degradation. In the states of Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, over-irrigation is responsible for the land degradation due to water logging, leading to increase in salinity and alkalinity in the soil. The minerals processing like grinding of limestone for cement industry and calcite and soapstone for ceramic industry generate huge quantity of dust in the atmosphere. It retards the process of infiltrations of water into the soil after it settles down on the land. In recent years, industrial influence as waste have become a major source of land and water pollution in many parts of the country. There are many ways to solve the problems of land degradation. Afforestation and proper management of grazing can help to some extent. Planting of shelter belts or plants, control to overgrazing, stabilizations of sand dunes by growing thorny bushes are some of the methods to check land degradation. Proper management of wastelands, control of mining activities, proper discharge and disposal of industrial effluents and waste after treatment can reduce land and water degradation in industrial and suburban areas. Now next one is soil as a resource. Soil is the most important renewable natural resource. It is the medium of plant growth and supports different types of living organisms on the earth. The soil is a living system. It takes millions of years to form soil up to a few centimeters in depth. Relief, parent rock or bedrock, climate, vegetation and other forms of life and time are important factors in the formation of soil. Various forces of nature such as change in temperature, actions of running water, wind and glaciers, activities of decomposers, etc., contribute to the formation of soil. Chemical and organic changes which take place in the soil are equally important. Soil also consists of organic, humus, and inorganic materials that you can see in figure 1.6. It is here soil profile. Topsoil, the upper soil layer, subsoil, weathered rocks, sand and silt clay. Next one is substratum, weathered parent rock material. Next one, unweathered parent bed rocks. On the basis of the factors responsible for soil formation, color, thickness, texture, age, chemical and physical properties, the soil of India can be classified in different types. Classification of soils. India has varied relief features, landforms, climatic regimes and vegetation types. These have contributed in the development of various types of soils. First one is alluvial soils. This is the most widely spread and important soil. In fact, the entire northern plains are made of alluvial soil. These have been deposited by three important Himalayan river systems, the Indus, the Ganga and the Brahmaputra. These soils are also extend in Rajasthan and Gujarat through a narrow corridor. Alluvial soil is also found in the eastern coastal plains, particularly in the deltas of Mahanadi, the Godavari and Krishna and the Kaveri rivers. It is shown in figure 1.7 alluvial soil. The alluvial soil consists of various proportions of sand, silt and clay. As we move inlands towards the river valleys, soil particles appear somewhat bigger in size in the upper reaches of the river valley, that is near the place of the break of slope. The soils are coarse. Such soils are more common in Piedmont plains such as Dours, Chos and Terai. Apart from the size of their grains or the components, soils are also described on the basis of their age. According to their age, alluvial soils can be classified as old alluvial, that is called Bhangar, and new alluvial, that is called Khaddar. The Khaddar soil has higher concentration of conker nodules than the Khaddar. It has more fine particles and is more fertile than the Bhangar. Alluvial soils as a whole are very fertile. Mostly these soils contain adequate proportion of potash, phosphoric acid and lime, which are ideal for growth of sugarcane, paddy, waste, wheat and other cereals and pulse crops. Due to its high fertility, regions of alluvial soils are intensively cultivated and densely populated. Soils in the drier areas are more alkaline and can be productive after proper treatment and irrigation. Now we will discuss about black soil. These soils are black in color and are also known as ragour soils. Black soil is ideal for growing cotton and is also known as black cotton soil. It is believed that climatic condition along with the parent rock material are the important factors for the formation of black soil. This type of soil is typical of Deccan Trap regions spread over northwest Deccan Plateau and is made up of lava flows. They cover the plateaus of Maharashtra, Saurashtra, Malwa, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh and extend in the southeast directions along the Godavari and the Krishna valleys. The black soils are made up of extremely fine, that is clay material. They are well known for their capacity to hold moisture. In addition, they are rich in soil nutrients such as calcium, carbonate, magnesium, potash and lime. These soils are generally poor in phosphoric contents. They develop deep cracks during hot weather, which helps in the proper aeration of the soil. These soils are sticky, which wet and difficult to work on unless tilled immediately after the first shower or during the pre-monsoon period. Next one is red and yellow soil. Red soil develops on crystalline igneous rocks in areas of low rainfall in the eastern and southern parts of Deccan Plateau. Yellow and red soils are also found in parts of Orissa, Chhattisgarh, southern part of the Middle Ganga plain and along the Piedmont zone of the Western Ghats. These soils develop a reddish color due to diffusion of iron in crystalline and metamorphic rocks. It looks yellow when it occurs in a hydrated form. Laterite soil. Laterite has been derived from the Latin word later. We can discuss about laterite soil. Laterite has been derived from the Latin word later, which means brick. The laterite soil develops in areas with high temperature and heavy rainfall. This is the result of intense leaching due to heavy rain. Humus content of the soil is low because of the most of the microorganisms, particularly the decomposers like bacteria, get destroyed due to high temperature. Laterite soils are suitable for cultivation with adequate doses of manures and fertilizers. These soils are mainly found in Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, and the hilly areas of Orissa and Assam. After depositing appropriate soil conservation techniques, particularly in the hilly areas of Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu, this soil is very useful for growing tea and coffee. Red laterite soils in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Kerala are more suitable for crops like cashew nut. Next one is arid soil. Arid soils range from red to brown in color. They are generally sandy in texture and saline in nature. In some areas, the salt content is very high and common salt is obtained by evaporating the water. Due to the dry climate, high temperature, evaporation is faster and the soil lacks humus and moisture. The lower horizons of the soil are occupied by conker because of the increasing calcium content downwards. The conker layers formation in the bottom horizons restrict the infiltrations of water. After proper irrigation, these soils become cultivable, as has been in the case of Western Rajasthan. Now you can see in figure 1.10 arid soil and figure 1.9 laterite soil. Now we will discuss about the forest soil. These soils are found in the hilly and mountainous areas where sufficient rainforests are available. The soil texture varies according to the mountain environmental where they are formed. They are loamy and silty in valleys, sides and core, gained in the upper slopes. In the snow covered areas of Himalayas. Next one is forest soils. These soils are found in the hilly and mountainous areas where sufficient rainforests are available. The soil's textures varies according to the mountain environmental where they are formed. They are loamy and silty in the valleys, sides and cores, grained in the upper slopes. In the snow-covered areas of Himalayas, these soils experience denudations and are acidic with low humus content. The soils found in the lower parts of the valleys, particularly on the river terraces and alluvial fens, are fertile. Soil erosion and soil conservation. The denudation of the soil cover and subsequent washing down is described as soil erosion. The processes of soil formation and erosion go on simultaneously, and generally there is a balance between the two. Sometimes this balance is distributed due to human activities like deforestation, overgrazing, construction, and mining, etc. While natural forces like wind, glacier, and water lead to soil erosion. The running water cuts through the clay soils and makes deep channels as gullies, that is shown in figure 1.12, gully erosion. The land becomes unfit for cultivation and is known as bad land. In the Chambal basin, such lands are called ravines. Sometimes water flows as a sheet over large areas down a slope. In such cases, the topsoil is washed away. This is known as sheet erosion. Wind blows loose soil off flat or sloping land, known as wind erosion. Soil erosion is also caused due to defective methods of farming, plowing in a wrong way, that is up and down the slopes form channels for the quick flow of water, leading to soil erosion. Plowing along the counter lines can decelerate the flow of water down the slopes. This is called counter flowing. Steps can be cut out on the slopes, making terraces. Terrace cultivation restricts erosion. Western and central Himalayas have well developed terrace farming. Large fields can be divided into strips of grass are left to grow between the crops. This breaks up the force of wind. This method is known as strip cropping. Planting lines of trees to create shelter also works in a similar way. Rows of such trees are called shelter belts. These shelter belts have contributed significantly to the stabilizations of the sand dunes and in the stabilizing the desert in western India.